Good afternoon, doctor. Hi. Can you tell us your occupation? Yes, I'm a deputy medical examiner for the County of Los Angeles. How long have you worked as a medical examiner? I've been a medical examiner for 9 years. How long have you worked as a medical examiner for Los Angeles County? I've been a medical examiner for Los Angeles County for 5 years. Can you tell us what background, training, and experience you have that qualifies you for your job as a deputy medical examiner? Yes, so I have completed significant education. I started my education at the University of California at Berkeley for undergraduate degree. After that, I went to Georgetown University to receive a master's in physiology. Subsequent to that, I went to the Ohio State University for medical school. After that, I completed residency in pathology at the University of Southern California, and then I completed a fellowship at the LA County Coroner's Office. What are your duties as a deputy medical examiner generally? Generally, we conduct autopsies to determine case and manner of death. Okay, and before I ask you what an autopsy is, can you tell us approximately how many autopsies you've conducted? Personally, I've done over 2,000. Okay, and of that 2,000, have you ever done any autopsies involving gunshot wound victims? Yes. Approximately how many? I would say hundreds. Okay, can you tell us what's involved in an autopsy generally? What is that? Yes. So an autopsy is a post-mortem examination of the body that is an external examination as well as an internal examination. The internal examination includes examination of the organs as well as collecting of tissues for subsequent testing, for example, toxicology testing. And then at the end of the autopsy, we would prepare an autopsy report. Okay, was an autopsy performed on an Ermias Joseph Azkadam on April 1st, 2019? Yes. Who performed that autopsy? The doctor who performed it is Dr. Dutra. Are you familiar with Dr. Dutra? Yes, he is a colleague of mine. Colleague of yours meaning he works for the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner? Yes. Approximately how long have the two of you been colleagues? For a few years. When a deputy medical examiner who performs an autopsy is not available, does the county coroner send other doctors or prepare other doctors to look at reports, photographs, x-rays, or other information to see if the new doctor can form an opinion as to what caused the person's death? Yes. Is that common? That is a common practice, yes. Did you do that in this case? I did. Tell us what you did. In this case, I did review Dr. Dutra's autopsy report. I viewed x-rays on the case as well as photographs, and I reviewed the investigative information as well. Okay, after reviewing all of that information, were you able to form your own independent opinion as to what caused Mr. Azkadam's death? Yes. What is that opinion? My opinion to his cause of death is multiple gunshot wounds, and the manner of death is homicide. Okay, at this time I want to show you. Before I do that, let me ask you just to state what that opinion is based on. Again, that opinion is based on my review of the autopsy report, the investigative information, photographs, and x-rays pertinent to this case. All right, now let me show you this exhibit. This will be Grand Jury Exhibit number 35. Actually, before I show you 35, I want to show you 34 because I want to make sure that the autopsy that you reviewed to form your own opinion involves the same person who was the victim in this case, okay? Yes. So let me show you Grand Jury Exhibit number 34. Do you recognize what's shown in this exhibit? I do. What does this exhibit show? This exhibit shows the decedent. You can see his face in the photograph, and there are a number of placards and identifying numbers at the bottom, which indicates the coroner's case number for this case. Okay, does the coroner issue a unique case number for each and every autopsy that the coroner conducts? Yes. And is that case number shown in this exhibit? Yes. Can you tell us what it is? The case number is 2019-02546. And does the 2019 indicate the year of the autopsy? Yes. And then the sequential number after that, does that mean that this was the 2546th case opened by the coroner in 2019? Yes. And then each year that number starts all over again, correct? Correct. Did you look at a number of photographs of the decedent? Yes. Did those photographs show individual wounds? They did. I'm not going to show any of those photographs this afternoon, but I want to show you Form 20, which shows an anatomical diagram, front and back, of a person. Do you recognize this exhibit? I do. This is Grand Jury Exhibit number 35, showing Coroner's Diagram Form 20, which is a common form used by the coroner, correct? Yes. Was this particular diagram used and written by Dr. Dutra? It was. And there's some notes written on this diagram, correct? Yes. You said you reviewed those and you considered those informing your own opinion, is that correct? Yes. Okay, so because we're talking about your own opinion, we're not that concerned with the notes written on this diagram by Dr. Dutra, okay? Yes. Can you walk us through the injuries that Mr. Azkadam suffered that led to your opinion that he died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds? Yes. I want to give you this pointer, top button, and then you don't have to point it at the screen. You can frankly point it anywhere. You'll see the cursor come up and then you can move it as needed. Okay. You don't have to point it at the big screen. Oh, right. I'm just trying to practice. Okay, you get a feel for it. It's really working off my computer, so... Okay, so would you like me to go through each of the wounds? Yes, so when a person suffers multiple wounds, it is common for medical examiners to label the wounds in a sequential order, such as gunshot wound 1, gunshot wound 2. Is that true? Yes. And those numbers don't correspond to when the injury was suffered or inflicted. It's just a way of identifying an injury, correct? Correct. Let me ask you broadly, how many separate gunshot wounds did Mr. Azkadam suffer? He suffered 11 total gunshot wounds. Okay, and does that mean that 11 different projectiles struck his body? Not necessarily. In some cases, a bullet will pass through one part of the body, exit, then re-enter the body in a different location. Even though those would be two separate gunshot wounds, they could be from the same bullet. In your opinion, in this case, or do you have an opinion whether or not the 11 wounds that you noted were inflicted by 11 different projectiles or not? I think it's possible for them to be inflicted by 11 projectiles. However, there is one particular injury that is in a location where it's possible to have also re-entered the body, but I cannot be sure about that. Okay, is it correct to say that your opinion is he suffered at least 10 separate gunshot wounds, with one possible wound being the result of a bullet that struck one location on his body, then grazed another? Yes. So we're looking at 10 separate gunshot wounds? At least. All right, can you walk us through them quickly? Yes, so the first one would be gunshot wound number 1. That one is actually diagrammed on a separate diagram to the head. To talk about that gunshot wound, that was a gunshot wound that only went through the scalp and did not enter into the skull or the brain. Let's show you that now since you're talking about gunshot wound 1. Sure. I'm showing you Grand Jury Exhibit number 36, Coroner's Diagram number 22, gunshot wound number 1. Yes. Okay, so the entrance wound was to the posterior top of the scalp, right there, and exited to the left side of there. Again, it did not penetrate into the skull or the brain. And if I could go to the next one, let me ask you a question. When you're counting the gunshot wounds, you're only counting when the bullet goes in, not when the bullet goes out? Well, if they are connected pathway where it goes in and out, they would be contiguous. So that would be the whole of the gunshot wound. I see. Thank you. Go ahead. So although there's 2 holes to the head, you're counting this as one gunshot wound? Correct. And then when it's labeled, it would be gunshot wound 1 entrance, gunshot wound 1 exit. Going back to Grand Jury Exhibit number 35. Okay, so gunshot number 2 entered at the left armpit region here and exited the back of the shoulder there. That wound did fracture the upper portion of the arm bone, but did not go internally into internal organs. Gunshot wound number 3, it's a little obscured by the words here, but you can see a hole between the word use and only. So that's a gunshot wound entrance to the back, the right side of the back that penetrated into the chest and struck the lung. Gunshot wound number 4 entered at the lower chest. That wound, I'm trying to refresh my memory. Is it okay if I refer to the autopsy report? If that will assist you in refreshing your recollection? Yes. Madam Foreperson, with your permission? Yes? Yes. Thank you. So to repeat, gunshot wound number 4 entered the right part of the chest. It entered into the chest cavity, puncturing the lung again, and it exited the right back of the right shoulder. I'm sorry, that side, the back of the right shoulder. Gunshot wound number 5, this one entered the abdomen right there. That wound entered into the body. It perforated the liver. It also injured the right lung, and it lodged into his spine, severing his spinal cord. And that entrance of that bullet is right near his belly button, correct? Yes, it's to the upper left part of his belly button in the photograph. Thank you, doctor. You're on number 6? Gunshot wound number 6. Gunshot wound number 6 entered the right thigh right there. That one entered into his pelvic region and stopped in the region there. A bullet was recovered. Gunshot wound number 7 entered the left side of the thigh. That also proceeded to the pelvis, and a bullet was recovered. Gunshot wound number, I believe I'm at number 8. Yes. That gunshot wound entered the lateral or the outside part of the right thigh, and that ended up also in the pelvis, and a bullet was recovered. Gunshot wound number 9. 9. Sorry. Gunshot wound number 9. You can see the diagram here showing several lines going up towards the right buttock. This is considered a graze wound, and there were multiple wounds on the skin. So it traveled in a very tangential manner, grazing the skin at multiple locations, finally exiting at the right buttock. And then now we're at gunshot wound number 10. So gunshot wound number 10 entered his right foot on the outside of his big toe there, and the bullet lodged within the right heel. Gunshot wound number... Was that bullet recovered? It was recovered, yes. Thank you. Go ahead. And I'll summarize the bullets after I go through all the wounds. Gunshot wound number 11. This was the wound that I consider to be the wound that possibly could have re-entered. So it was a graze wound to the right elbow right there. And because it was a graze wound to an extremity, if you can imagine, if your arm is in a number of locations, it's possible where the bullet that passes through that area could have re-entered toward the torso or the lower extremities or the lower part of the body. Can you bring that microphone a little closer to you? Yes. Thank you. As I said, the graze wound has possibility of re-entering the body. In total, there were 6 projectiles or bullets recovered within the body. Okay, and there were 3 separate gunshot wounds that perforated or penetrated the lung, correct? Correct. Did you find blood in his lung, or was blood found in his lungs? Yes, there was a significant amount of blood in the right chest cavity. It was measured at... Was it approximately 1 liter of blood? Yes, it was actually greater than 1 liter of blood in the chest cavity, which is a significant amount. Okay, you mentioned one of the gunshot wounds severed his spine. Does that mean that if he had survived these gunshot wounds, would he have been paralyzed? Yes, it is described as having transected the spine, so it actually tore the spine to have separated it. So in that case, there would have been loss of function, at least in his legs. All right, thank you. No further questions. Grand jurors, if you have a question, please raise your hand so the sergeant at arms can collect them. You indicated that the manner of death is a homicide. What does that mean, doctor? A homicide is considered a death at the hands of another. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Madam Foreperson, I don't see any questions. If you could please admonish the witness. Before you leave, please listen carefully to what I'm going to say to you now. You are admonished not to reveal to any person except as directed by the court what questions were asked or what responses were given or any other matters concerning the nature or subject of the grand jury's investigation which you learned during your appearance before the grand jury, unless and until such time as the transcript of this grand jury proceeding is made public. I wish to advise you that a violation of this order can be the basis of a contempt of court charge against you. Do you understand this admonition? Yes. Thank you, doctor. You're excused. Have a nice evening. Thank you. Thank you, doctor.